Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in for our Wednesday night study online. Yes, we are still online, but with that, we have opportunities to have cool discussions um, about various topics and what the Bible says about it. Last week, a good buddy of mine, Pete, was kind enough to stop in, and this week we got a special treat. As you can see, my beautiful wifey, who is actually uh, hundreds and hundreds of miles away in Montana as we speak, visiting our son Jacob and our granddaughter Skylin. She is kind enough to drop in and still connect with us. Babe, say hey.
Hi.
What's the weather like in Montana, real quick? What's the weather like up there?
It's super windy. So if I blow away, come get me.
For sure, for sure. Um, the weather is sunny here right now, so it's kind of nice. Yeah.
Lucky you.
So obviously I am in Modesto in our home, and you are in Jacob's house. Real quick, scale of 1 to 10, how much do you miss me?
Oh, I miss you tons.
All right, 10s and 10s, let's go. Cool. So we have had suggestions about topics to talk about while we have to go through this season of online study and things like that. And last week we talked about a subject of loneliness, which is kind of weird to talk about loneliness, but we had a great conversation. This week I was gonna look into that notebook of suggestions that I wrote down. However, I think that we would be doing a disservice if we did not talk about kind of what's going on in our country, in our culture, and in our communities. The 3 C's. I just thought of that. Trademark that. And just the variety of different feelings and emotions that different people are feeling and displaying and doing online. And the dog's moving the lamp behind me, so. But just the different kind of emotions that people are displaying. Social media is a buzz right now. So many different things happen in terms of politics. And we're going through almost a year into this pandemic that has altered people's lives and careers and businesses, how they do life in their homes. And kids are still not really fully be able to be in school. Some are, some aren't. And so we want to talk about that and just kind of touch on, what are our roles as Jesus followers, as Bible believing Christians, and what does the Bible kind of say about circumstances like this, and how should we proceed? How should we interact with people and follow God in the times of unrest? And so you kind of have a unique perspective right now because you are in a military town right now in Great Falls, where there's a huge Air Force base. What do you like? What seems to be, from your perspective, what you see online, the people you interact with, the things, maybe even the young whippersnappers that you're around right now? Our son is 21 years old, 21. So his group of friends are, what would they be, Gen Zs? Is that the term, Gen Zs right now?
I think so.
Yeah, something like that. Like, what's your perspective on that? Like, how are people feeling? What are you seeing and things like that?
So it's funny that you asked that because just last night we were having a big conversation about the COVID vaccine. Obviously, with them being in the military, they have an opportunity to receive that vaccine. And so we were talking a lot about what they're hearing on Facebook in regards to side effects and how it contradicts like what the doctor's saying on base in regards to the COVID vaccine. So we were sharing some perspectives on whether or not they should get that vaccine. And it really made me realize the impact that social media has on all of us, and how much we tend to believe everything that we're reading because we think, oh, this, it's on Facebook, and it looks like a valid source of information. So yeah, it kind of lines up with what I already think. So yeah, it must be true. And so I was trying to encourage them to each do like their own research, like I've been trying to do, to make sure the information that they're really basing their own decisions on is valid, and that they're getting everything that they need to get before they make such a big decision like that. But yeah, it really made me realize how much social media really influences our decision making processes.
Totally, yeah. Obviously, we know we're going to have a change in presidents. I think in about a week, right? 7 days. So you have half our country is mad about it, and then half of our country is glad about it, right? And so it seems like there's two views really. One is that like the country's gonna end, everything's gonna break down, our way of life is gonna be destroyed. This is just the beginning. And then the other side is like, yes, finally, like we have the change that we wanted. Like now we can get back into unity and things like that. And so what we have had is kind of like this big divide based off of policies or politics and things like that. And I don't want to get too much into that, but what I do know is that we've had a lot of social unrest, right? Obviously, when they were counting the electoral votes and stuff, people rushed the state capitol, and some people actually lost their lives and things like that. And so it creates like a lot of fear in the lives of people. Like a lot of people in our country they're scared. They're scared, kind of like, well, no matter what, someone's going to be mad, right? No matter what, there's going to be unrest, or no matter what, people are going to feel like they've been wronged, or their side has been wronged, and things like that. And so there's a couple of things that I think maybe we can kind of talk about. One would be like how do we receive unity? How do we produce unity in times like this? Two, like, should we be afraid because there's like this big split, and everyone's thinking civil war or whatever. And then I guess lastly would be like, what are our roles in terms of supporting our leaders, whether we like them or not? And so I guess the first question would be like, how do we get to unity when we have different viewpoints and things like that?
So one thing that I have struggled with on my own is just really remembering and believing that God is protecting me regardless of the situation that's going on. And so when I remember that, God is for me, and that, he has plans for me, I'm better able to accept and be around people that may not have my exact same perspective on politics or the things that are going on around me. Jeremiah 29:11 is a verse that it's very familiar to most of us, I'm sure, and I don't mean to overuse it, but it's so true, because it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, and to give you a future and a hope." And it's not like I think, it's I know. And so when I keep that in perspective, I don't feel like I have to be going around defending my viewpoint to everybody, defending my perspective, just because somebody might, contradict or feel differently than I do. I feel like, that we can still come together, and we have different giftings and different viewpoints, which makes us stronger as a community and as a country. And so keeping that in mind helps me.
That's good. it's like a complicated thing, but at the same time, it's kind of simple, right? Um,
Right.
you know, this will segue into the next part, but um, like what does the Bible say like we should always do, right? Like no matter the season, no matter the circumstance,
Mm.
what's the thing that Jesus said was most important, right? Um, which is, love your God with all your heart, and then love your neighbor as you love yourself,
Right.
right? Like that's the
Mm.
main thing. That's something we should always be striving to do. And so
Mm.
I think that like if we have that mentality where, hey, like I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, it doesn't mean you're bad, it doesn't mean you're evil, it doesn't mean I'm bad, it doesn't mean I'm evil. It's just we have a
Mm.
difference of opinion. What we do share in is what? We love Jesus, right? And
Right.
even if you're in a disagreement with somebody that doesn't love Jesus, like if they don't believe or they have a difference of religious preference, like we're still supposed to love them. Like they're still our neighbor, you know? And if that's the case, then I think like we have a higher responsibility, maybe our higher calling to go above and beyond like what we think is, um, I don't know, earned, and just say, hey, I'm going to love you anyways, right? I don't care if you, um, are a Republican or a Democrat, or if you're a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Christian. Like I'm gonna love you regardless, and I'm gonna show you the same portion of love and respect um, that I would want, right? Like the golden rule.
Right.
That kind of
Right.
segues into like the next part where um, you know, like the political difference where um, we're having uh, two vastly different presidential changes, right? So you have,
Mm.
President Trump, who um, obviously uh, has his own characteristics, right? And then you
Mm.
have President-elect, right? Biden
Mm.
coming in, and he has his own characteristics, and they're vastly different. Um,
Right.
like, like, what do you say to the people that um, maybe are super excited or super fearful that things are going to change the way that they don't want it to, like what is our role in that, like what should we be doing?
So I think that we should be encouraging everybody and those around us to remember that God is still in charge and that this election went the way God intended it to. So it wasn't like some plan came through and overrode God's plan, or, and so obviously that would be for somebody who's feeling a little bit fearful and discouraged by this change. Um, so that's something that I feel that we have to remember, that whether it's our direction or not, that God is still in charge, and that He instructs us not to live in fear. And I always love the verse in 2 Timothy 1:7, where God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of sound mind, or sound judgment, depending on the
Yeah.
translation. And so when we're remembering and we are emulating that in our own lives to those around us, um, that way whatever we're speaking also rings true in the way that we live. Because when we're full of fear and worry, then our actions and our speech are going to be full of fear and worry. And so we have to just kind of like show and encourage others to be supportive and to be praying for, and to be um, respectful. I don't know, in whoever is in leadership positions, whether it's the president of the country or our boss, or somebody that's ahead of us or above us in ministry. Like in any way, we have to um, be respectful, and just remember that no matter what, God is in control overall, regardless of the outcome. So
100%. Yeah, that's
mm,
good. I think like sometimes we get this mentality of like this isn't our problem, right? Or this
right.
is like, you know um, if you're a kid watching this, maybe you feel like, hey, this is an adult issue, it doesn't really
Mm,
affect me, things like that.
sure.
But I had this interesting conversation with our son Ethan. He's just asking me about what I thought about the what would happen at the Capitol and
Mm,
things like that. And he hears different viewpoints, from different, members of a family and things like that. Um, and so he was asking me, like, what I thought about it. Did I buy into, you know, conspiracy theories and this and that? And like I just told him that it doesn't matter. Like what
Mm,
you were saying, God is still God. He's on the throne. I think we have to like really remind ourselves daily, like who God is and what He's capable of. I think we get really wrapped up in what's going in our lives, whether it's these big political issues or whether it's our daily issues of
right.
um, like I hope I get this job, or I hope I get accepted into this school, or I hope I can afford this car or whatever. Like like God is always going to be God. Like He is never changing, and if that's the case, then He's always going to be in control. Nothing happens outside of His purview. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was just telling him, like, it doesn't matter. Like we have to be respectful. A long
Right.
time ago, man, like a long time ago, I had this. I just called you man, and that's weird. A long time ago, beautiful wife of mine, when he was elected, and so many people, you know, disapproved of it, and
Mm,
so many people were for it, right? And so, we're just having this conversation, and I was just telling him, like, no matter who the president is, like, I'm gonna pray for them to be led by God to make right choices, right decision that's going to be good for our country. And like I feel bad for people that want people to fail, whether
mhm,
whatever side of the aisle you're on, like whether you like George W. Bush or you liked, Barack Obama. Like it doesn't matter. Like if they're in charge of the country, like you should want them to do well. You should want them to be
right.
successful, right? And it's like having a like being on a boat and having like this captain that you're just like, man, I don't really like the guy. I don't like what he tweets, or I don't like how he talks, or I don't like how he dresses, or I don't like it, whatever. Like you still want him to do
Mm,
well, while he's captain of the ship. Like you don't want the ship to sink just to be like, ha, I told you he was no good or she was no good. Like it that doesn't do
mm-hmm.
anything, right? Like it doesn't help you. And so we should always be respectful of our leadership and praying for them, because God puts into power who He puts into power. And there's so many stories in the
Right.
Bible, especially like in the New Testament, and even in the Old Testament, and even in the New Testament, where people, were in power that, suppressed um, God's people, right? Whether it's the Jews, the Hebrews, or the Christians. Like people oppressed, God's people for a variety of reasons, and it was all part of God's plan. You have like years and years and years of
Mhm.
slavery in Egypt, you know, and they just cry out to God. They cry out to God,
Right.
and it's like we have to remember that because God's in control, because He's doing something good, that maybe
Mhm.
we should just be worried about that, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. For
Yeah.
me, um, I just wanted to share this verse, babe. For me, like
Mm,
in Psalm 66, verse 7, it says, He rules by His might forever. His eyes keep watch
mm,
on the nations. Let not the rebellious exalt themselves. So, like, if He rules by His might forever and His eyes keep watch on the nations, like, why do I feel like I have to be like a justice warrior and like argue with everybody on Facebook or you know what I mean? Like if
mm.
God's got it, like what good am I to do to try and argue with people all the time, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure.
Argue
And
with
just
you.
reminding that, right. Yeah. And remembering that, even in stuff like this, like, because, I probably used to think about, especially when I was younger, that, God doesn't care about who's in positions, and the political stuff. And He absolutely does, because it affects us. And, we have to remember that regardless of the outcome, that God is for us. And there is a verse in Romans 8:31, and it says, if God is for us, who can be against us? And it just reminds me that, even if the outcome isn't what I think is the greatest outcome, like my understanding and my wisdom is pales in comparison to God's. And so if this is part of His plan and I know that He is for me, then I have to trust that whatever's going on, whether I agree with it or not, that, I'm going to be okay and my family's going to be
Yeah.
okay.
Declare
So,
that.
mhm,
Declare it. That's some good stuff right there.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like in our day-to-days, right? Like it's super easy because of like the vast knowledge that we have accessible to via cell phone computers and stuff, we're able to really access so much information,
Yeah,
whether it's real
too much.
or fake or good or
Mhm.
bad. Our mind is constantly just being pulled in these directions, and with those influences come, you know, fear and anxiety and dread and worry and things like that. So, like
Yep.
in our day-to-day lives, right? Like whether you're an
Mhm.
adult or a teenager, like what should we do? We wake up in the morning, so much is happening in the world, right? Where we we should feel justified in us um being a little scared or afraid or worried, right? Like
Sure.
we mentioned earlier, like just the pandemic alone going, almost a year, schools were shut, jobs were being lost, businesses are
Mhm.
closing, we're having to shelter in place. We're wearing masks all the time. We're missing
Right.
the delight in smiling in person and giving people
Mhm.
hugs or shaking hands and things like that.
Right.
Just in the light of that, like how do we go through each day and choosing to look for the hope, choosing to look for the good in what's going on in our
Mhm.
day?
So one way that, um, for me personally, that's helped me a lot is to remember that whatever's ahead of me, whatever I'm going to be facing, even that day, that week, that year, that God has already been there. He's ahead of me. He's paving the way, and I know it's like hard to like wrap your head around that because I know it is for me. Some days it's like, how is he going this direction if it's hurting me or painful for me or uncomfortable for me. And some of the toughest paths that I've walked, yeah, some of them have been my choice and maybe not exactly what God had planned for me. But the times that I know that I'm waking up and I'm deciding to step into and onto that path that God has set before me, that even when it's difficult, because He's already been on that path for me, making the way, that at the end of that path, He always has a blessing for me, whether it's growth or um, a gift of, it's something that I've grown in an area of prayer or in relationship with somebody, that he doesn't just leave me high and dry or anything. Like, even when I've chosen not to go on that path that he has set before me, he's always right there to make it all good for me again when I turn to him. So that is one way that gives me hope, and that, that eventually, it may not be exactly what I think it's going to be, but that God has a purpose for every single day that I live for me, and for everybody that are His children. So.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And like, what are your hopes? Like, what do you see? Well, rather, what do you hope for in the near future, right? In the next couple weeks, couple months, like what are you praying for, um, in terms of our culture, our communities, our country? Like what's your prayer for that?
So my hope is for my children to be able to go back to school full time. Um,
Great,
but
right? Let's go. Great. Yeah.
besides that, I'm hoping that we're all learning from the time that we have been spending with our families. Just that we are really getting the message that I think God has really been calling us to be, like serving within our homes more than we were before. And I think that when we're doing that, that when these transitions happen, that are huge transitions in, politics and stuff right now, that we're able to be more unified because we're closer to our families, which makes us closer to our communities, and each other. And obviously, I hope and pray for people to be healthy and for businesses to be able to open up again, and that kind of stuff, and that we're able to make smart decisions in regards to that as a community. So that's been something that I'm looking forward to and hopeful for. But I think overall, God has had a message for us through this, and for me, it's been that, I need to remember, I need to go back to basics in regards to my family and be investing my time and energy more into that so that we're more unified.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of lasting relationships, friendships, and things like that,
Mm,
I've heard this. I don't know if this has happened to me personally.
mm,
I mean, I'm not sure, but I've heard that because of the disunity that's going on and the culture gap,
mm,
and how society is just kind of labeling things, and
mm,
that if you have disagreements, that people are kind of just like defriending people, right? Like you see it on
mm-hmm.
Facebook or Instagram, like you
Right,
just get unfollowed, or
right.
Snapchat or whatever. Like, do people still use MySpace? I don't know, right? But like people are just getting unfriended. Like there's this big divide. Um, I think
Mm,
maybe this lesson in the pandemic and just the political war, um
mm,
maybe that just kind of like gives us like a lesson of how like important like real friendship is, right? So like just to
yes.
kind of like shift a little bit into like the term friendship and the
Hmm.
relationship that goes along with that. um I think what we're shown here is that um friendship is important, that isolation is not good for you, right? That
Right.
when you isolate yourself, when you separate yourself from the herd, when 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 you try and go it alone, that it's detrimental to your body, to your mental stability, your emotional health, and then also your spiritual health, right? um
Mm-hmm.
the big thing obviously right now is like, can people go to church? Like, can
Mm,
people eat at restaurants? Like, we miss that social
right.
gathering, right? So what I'm thinking is that I hope that our generation, right, like everybody that's living through this, whether you're 5 years old or 85 years old, right? Like the people
Mm-hmm.
living through this, like we should not be a generation where once it passes or once it gets easier, we forget everything that we've learned,
Right.
right? Where like you see that in the story of the Israelites, like time and time
Mm-hmm.
again, they see God produce miracles, redeem them, and then they complain. They go backwards,
Right.
right away. Like,
Right.
oh, it's bad. We need God. We need God. We need God. Oh, God's helping us. Let's do what we want, right? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
we should not do that. And so I think that once this passes, like I hope that we value our friendships more, right? Like we're having personal relationships with people where you want to hang out with them, be a part of their lives, and have them be a part of your lives. Like
Mm-hmm.
I hope that becomes a lesson where it's so valuable that it doesn't like float away. And then once we're able to hang out whenever we want or whatever, that we're just like, I'll text them. Like,
Yeah.
we can FaceTime, like, right? Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. Because I know that it's easy to get lazy too right now and investing in people because we were like restricted from it for a while and then we're super fearful of like what if we get sick, what if we get somebody else sick, and obviously we need to be cautious of that, and I'm not dismissing because I believe in COVID and the science behind it, but what's even more important in my perspective, just because I've seen the effects of the mental health part of the isolation and not being able to have contact or hug people, touch people, be face to face with them. That we need to hopefully remember how to be social, and be reaching out to people and connecting as much as we possibly can. So
Yeah,
that will be good to be able to do that again.
that's good. Um, last point, last question. Um, in terms of disagreements, right? Um, why is it so easy for people to um, disagree with somebody and then label them a certain group, a certain way? Uh, Probably not
So
phrasing it correctly, but you and I have a disagreement, and I say, well, if you don't agree with me, that must mean you're um, inconsiderate for
Mm,
blankety blank, right?
yeah.
Or you disagree with me and you say, well, if you really feel that way, then you must not care about the turtles, dying, right? So, and because of that, we have this divide, and our friendship is broken. And like, how do we have healthy disagreements and still remain unified under God's banner?
So one of my light bulb moments in regards to disagreements happened while I was in school, and there was a class I was taking, and um, it pointed out how somebody can have two people can have a disagreement about something, and it's not even a like both of them. Most of the time, people aren't. There's not one right person and one wrong person, because we argue, we live, and we understand, we receive things, we give things out according to our perspective. And our perspectives are based upon our experiences. And so you and I can both look at the same exact dog, and we're both looking at the same dog. There's not two dogs, there's one exact dog. And I can see it as a black and tan German shepherd, and you can see it as a brown wiener dog. I mean, truly, that's how our life experiences makes us see things. And so when I really realized that, I really looked at any of my relationships. Now, I'm not perfect at this, not by any means, because I still have my perspectives and my feelings and things that I've gone through, which influences my emotions greatly. But if I remember that, just because I see it this way doesn't mean they see it the same way, and it doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make me right. It really helps me to be more understanding and not want to be so argumentative about something. And so even when it comes to politics, when it comes to COVID, yes, we have, the science and all that behind it. And yes, we have what the Bible says and all that behind it. But we have to understand that when people are speaking from their place, and that's the other thing, is we need to allow people to speak in their place and from their places, especially when we're reading social media or we are asking a person their opinion. Like, we can't shame them for where they're coming from, because we have zero clue of their backgrounds, or what things they've lived through to have that perspective. And so we have to be understanding and sensitive to people's backgrounds and their perspectives, because just because they don't see it the way we do doesn't make them wrong.
Yeah, that's good.
But,
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we think we only need to hang out with people that agree with us, or talk to
right.
people that agree.
Or that we think we can't have a conversation with somebody about something serious.
Yeah,
People automatically like, they're arguing when they're not.
yeah. No, and I get that. Like, I'm kind of like encouraged though by that, because my whole life I kind of subscribe to, like, let's hang out with everybody. You know what I mean? Like, let's have a
Right.
a good friendship, a good time. And I'm
Hmm.
encouraged because, like, Jesus kind of lived like that, right? Where he went to, people groups and outcasts and
Hmm.
disliked, and people that had different thoughts about things than he did, or lived a different way than he would say was wrong or right. And he still sought
Correct.
out relationship with them. And I think that's like a good learning point for us, where we can say, hey, Jesus did this, I'm gonna do it too. Simply for the fact, even if I don't have that initial like desire to do it, I'm gonna do it because Jesus said to. And when push comes to shove, like, that's just a good motto to live by. Like, oh, Jesus did it, I'm gonna do it, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're not gonna be wrong. If Jesus did it, you should do it, right? So, like, that's a good
Right.
good good thing to go by.
Hmm.
I like that.
Sure.
So, with all that being said, talking about relationships, talking about political stuff and pandemic stuff and all that, like, it's important to just remember that there is hope, right? Like God is still here, He's still with us. And the main thing, despite all these big problems, big things going on, is that God is still here desiring relationship with you, that He is still seeking you out for
Mhm.
relationship, to connect with you, and that He's still operating behind the scenes in your life in order for you to have that happen, to make that happen. And so I guess our calling is still the mission. Like, let's go tell people about Jesus. Let's go show people
Mhm.
Jesus. Like, I think one thing our country maybe fails at in a whole, or the church in our country fails at as a whole, is that we confuse like our political alignment or our moral alignment with like
Mhm.
what what Jesus wants us to do, right? Like, it's more
Mhm.
important for us to be like, hey, you know, these political issues are good or bad, or, I believe in, wearing blazers to church rather than wearing sweaters to church, or, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
these nonsensical things compared to like, hey, God told me to make sure that you have heard about who Jesus is and what Jesus did, and
Mhm.
I want to share that with you through my speech or through my
Right.
action, right? And so
I
I
think
think,
like
yeah,
what can help us with that is just knowing that God has a plan for us. And I like the verse in Proverbs 3:5 where it says to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And we have to remember, like, yes, God created us, but He did not. We can never um, completely understand his entire plan. And
yeah,
so our brains are not even capable of having the understanding of the whole picture yet, but once we're in heaven, we will. So that's something to look forward to. But, just understanding that when we're not getting it, we're confused and we're like, well, why are things like this? That,
mhm,
we don't focus so much on that we need to focus on what God's plan is and his mission for us.
yeah, that's good. That's good.
Mm.
I like that. Yeah. Any closing thoughts? Something you want to mention you didn't get to mention, or a killer verse that will be encouraging as we sign off.
The Romans 8:28.
Romans eight
Yeah,
twenty eight. It's one of the
yeah,
more popular verses in the Bible, right?
yeah, it is, but it's something that, like, for people or anyone, we all go through stuff. We all feel inadequate. We all feel like there's no hope. That we also all have been in situations and times in our life where we feel like we've screwed up so badly that there's nothing we can do to turn things around. And when this popular verse is super encouraging in Romans 8:28, where it says, we know, and again, this is know, not guess or think. We know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And so when we love God, we're he's going to work things out according to his purpose. And so it doesn't matter how bad we've screwed up. It doesn't even matter if you screwed up 5 minutes ago. Before you start watching this video, you can turn to God. You can choose to love God, and he's going to work out every single thing from your past into something beautiful. And so knowing that gives us courage to do the things that give us hope and love each other and unify us together, and
Yeah,
be able to trust in God's plan and purpose regardless of if what's happening is what we completely agree with.
yeah, that's good. Like, it doesn't matter like who you voted for. Like, it matters who you
Right.
live for, right? And like, that's always good
Exactly.
to keep in perspective, or
Mhm.
who you're rooting for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, this was a good conversation. I feel like we touched on a lot. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, it's stuff that maybe not might not be like the most favorite thing to discuss, talk about, and things like that,
Right.
especially right now. But I think it's a good idea to do it. It's a good idea to have the conversations and see, what does the word say
Absolutely.
about it, and what does some wisdom sprinkled in with some experience, like how can we share,
Mm.
with our kids, with our young people. And as they go into their, they're ushering into adulthood, right? Like they're going into their young adulthood, and they're gonna start graduating and going into college and getting their jobs and careers, and so they're gonna be hit with a lot of these things, and so it's important to build them
Yep.
up.
Yeah.
Jamie, I super appreciate you taking the time to carve out a little bit of time out of your hang out with Jacob and hang out with Skyland time. Super
Of course.
appreciate you doing it. Um, Super smart. And I can say it because we're married. I love you. You're beautiful. And I'm going to pray, and then we're going to wrap this up. All right, guys? So pray with me real quick. Father, we thank you for you being who you are. We're grateful that you're on the throne, that you're still God, you're still in charge, and that even when things seem crazy, you still have a handle on things, that you're still moving pieces around and arranging things to be in accordance to your plan and your will. Just help us to live daily like you, even when it's hard, God. When circumstances and seasons are just monopolizing our energy and our strength and our mental durability, God, we just want to look to you and get everything from you, God. All your wisdom, all your encouragement, all your strength, all your guidance, God. Just help us to live by your will, God. We just put our trust in you, that you are who you say you are, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and that no matter what, God, that you are on our side and that we're on your side, Father. Just ask you just bless everyone listening to this, God. I just ask for a special blessing for my wife, and that she is able to do this, God. Just keep everybody safe, Lord. Just keep everybody healthy, and we just love you, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Feel free to share. You can watch it on our YouTube channel at L.I.T.YOUTH&YA, or you can check it out on our Facebook page. I'll post it up on there too. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good week. Love and praying for you. And if you need anything at all, feel free to reach out. We're here for you guys. Have a great day.